You know, I was watching an episode of You where measles came up.
Wait. When did I mention measles?
I don't know. It was on You.
Wait, what was on me? What are you talking about? Is Raymond even hearing what I'm saying? I never had the measles.
Was on You.
What does it mean? What does it mean? What does it mean?
You is finally over. After 5 long, excruciatingly frustrating seasons, Joe Goldberg's story has finally come to an end. And I couldn't be happier because I can finally stop screaming at my TV anytime his inner monologue starts. It's been a wild ride, and in true You fashion, the show tries to give this story a proper book-worthy ending. It's been convoluted, complex, annoying, and we're here to talk about it. So sit back, get a snack, grab a drink, and relax because there's a lot that I want to say. Okay, guys, I have to admit something. I hate You because of how much I found the first season entertaining. The story pulled me in. This good guy who's actually really toxic and obsessive over women that will stop at nothing to trap you, kill all of your friends, isolate you, and then ultimately have to off you because you're not crazy and you realize that he is a psychopath. The initial discourse of this series online was actually quite fascinating and also hilarious but scary. You had all of these fans romanticizing Joe Goldberg, thinking that he was actually a good guy because he will truly protect you no matter the cost. And I think that's why the format was so interesting, because we were finally following the story from the villain's POV, but we were getting so much insight into his intentions, into his feelings, into his way of thinking. It gave this villain such a complex backstory. The man willing to kill anyone and everyone to get with the woman he's obsessing over, only to turn around and kill her just to save his own ass. That guy was our protagonist. And I think that was quite fascinating, and Joe, I think, was brilliantly written. Not surprising that it's based on a series of books written by a woman. Leave it to women to figure out how complex yet simple men can be. I wanted to follow his story, but more than anything, I wanted to see him get punished. I wanted to see him face justice for all of his crimes. And by the end of season 1, when they actually go ahead and kill Guinevere Beck, I thought, wow, they really went there. And they managed to do something quite interesting in season 2 and 3 as well, but then it kind of derailed because season 3 and 2, they had the perfect antagonist to our hero, Joe Goldberg, and that was Love Quinn. She was his female version, another person who would stop at nothing to get with the person that she loves, even so far as killing whoever stood in the way. Except, of course, when toxic men are faced with their own toxicity shoved in their faces, they realize, whoa, that's crazy. And then it kind of became more of the same. The story got so convoluted with so many plot holes and unbelievable, unrealistic storylines that I thought, damn, we need to end this shit right now. And finally they did it with season 5. We finally got to the end of Joe Goldberg's story, and though it was a satisfying conclusion by the end, the journey to get there was excruciatingly painful. There were some interesting lines that really summarized the show quite well and forced the audience to really look within and realize that the problem may not be Joe. The problem may be the society that continues to exonerate Joe, that continues to accept Joe and romanticize Joe and turn a blind eye to all the evidence and all the allegations because it's just so hard to prove, and he's just so romantic and cute and a nice guy. Season 5 picks up 3 years after the ending of season 4. If you remember, Joe is now married to a billionaire, Kate Lockwood. We see that they got his son back from the gay couple they abandoned the child with at the end of season 3, which was really shitty if you think about it. A gay couple gets a kid, they get to raise him for 3, 4, 5 years, just so the rich parents come and snatch him away because they changed their minds. Now they want to raise the kid. Joe and Kate are now a power couple, and they're really trying to do good with the fortune of Kate's family to redeem themselves from all their past crimes. You know, Kate had that involvement with all the kids getting cancer and dying, and Joe has an extensive list of people that he murdered. And their agreement at the end of season 4 was that they can do better, they can be better, they can help each other become better. And that's, of course, just typical of a really toxic couple that should not be together. We find out that Kate has 2 sisters. They're twins, Reagan and Maddie. Reagan is truly an evil person, and you know that because her favorite insult is "see you next Tuesday." Her go-to slur is charisma, uniqueness, nerve, and talent. Y'all, she says a lot. And Maddie is the inferior, lesser twin who got gaslit by Reagan into being her surrogate so that Reagan could avoid stretch marks. But on the flip side, Maddie has been sleeping with Reagan's husband Harrison for a lot of years. So balance. Once again, there are 2 stories happening. One, Joe has to kill people to protect his family. Kate's Uncle Bob is digging dirt and trying to stage a coup against her because she is taking the company on more charitable routes, and everyone seems to be against that because there's one thing that billionaires don't like, and that is to give away money or to lose power. On the other story, he meets a new woman. Her name is Bronte, and if you think that's pretentious, it's not the most pretentious thing that the series has done. We can all remember I Wolf You.
I wolf you.
I wolf you too.
You're ugly, you're disgusting, I'm gonna kill you, give me $200.
But I do like that they took it back to season 1 and made Bronte very similar to Guinevere Beck. She knows books, she knows references and stories and romance, and Joe once again becomes completely mesmerized by her within seconds of meeting her. So, Joe the Protector, he offers to kill Bob and stage it as a suicide so that Kate can remain the CEO of the company. They go ahead with that, he kills Bob, she gives him the green light, and all seems fine until Reagan starts digging around because she fucking hates Kate and threatens them like point blank, I'm going to take you down, I'm going to take away the company from you, I'm going to ruin your lives. There's something really stupid about a villain that just lays all of their cards on the table from the get-go, but Joe wants to kill her because that's his go-to for solving any and all obstacles that come in his way, but Kate is against it. She's like, whoa, like, we already killed Uncle Bob. People are already suspicious that we did it. If you go ahead and kill the one person that is most suspicious about us, then it's really gonna look stupid. But Joe's rationale isn't logical. He wants her out. This is also a turning point in their relationship when Kate basically rejects this darker side of Joe. As you remember, at the end of season 4, Joe finally embraces his dark side, the side that wants to punish people, but also enjoys the killing. He just tries to confine his killing to bad people, which, as we know, does not work. He's literally killed so many good people. So Joe goes behind her back and kidnaps Reagan and puts her in that little glass box. But here's a twist. There's twins, right? There is bound to be a switcheroo, and there is. He accidentally kidnaps Maddie, who he thought was Reagan, because she was about to have a rape fantasy play out with Harrison, Reagan's husband. What he didn't know was that Maddie was actually sleeping with Harrison. And as Reagan's threats escalate, Joe kidnaps her too and puts her in the box with her sister and tells Maddie, hey, you want out? Kill your sister. And if you don't, I'm going to give her the same option. But the end conclusion here is one. Only one of you is getting out. Or none of you, if both of you refuse to kill the other. But we know that Reagan would not hesitate to kill Maddie because as soon as she wakes up, she starts chastising Maddie. She now knows about the affair and she doesn't spare any insults. She really digs her claws deep into Maddie's neck and really makes her feel like she's completely worthless. So Maddie, in a fit of almost delusional anger and sadness, kills Reagan. And his grand plan from here on out is to have Maddie impersonate Reagan, quit the company, ceding power to Kate, and just leaving them alone. Then she will go on a trip and they will fake Reagan's death as an accident that happened overseas. And then Maddie is free to come back and be with Harrison and her daughter because she is the one who carried the child. On the other end, we have Bronte, the girl that keeps breaking into Joe's bookstore, which is owned by Lockwood Company, And of course, he can't help himself. He hires her because he recognizes the potential, her love for books, her true passion for the literature of wherever. And Bronte is an aspiring playwright with a toxic ex named Clayton who just lingers around with thin-veiled threats of her owing him money, insinuations that she's here just to leech off of Joe, which wouldn't be the craziest thing because Joe gave her a job and then gave her the apartment upstairs. This man is really desperate for some pussy. And through a lot of pretentiousness and writing fantasies and back and forth, a lot of sexual tension, they eventually start sleeping together. When Reagan quits the company, Kate becomes highly suspicious because there's no way that she would just give her power away like that. So she confronts Joe, and at this point, their marriage is over. And it's also at this point that she finds out that Joe has been sleeping with his employee. Sensing an impossible to resolve drift between him and Kate, Joe goes back to Bronte ready to give himself completely over to her, only to find out that she's gone. She's gone, she left with her ex-boyfriend Clayton, and once again, he goes on one of his knight in shining armor crusades to save the woman that he truly loves, the only one that is able to understand him. Every single woman this man falls in love with is the one that's going to understand him. Anyway, he tracks her down to Atlantic City, they end up sleeping together, and when he wakes up, she's being assaulted by Clayton, so there is an altercation that ends with Joe smashing Clayton's head against a fireplace base, kills him, only to see Bronte's friends burst through the door, filming him on TikTok Live and telling everyone that Joe Goldberg just killed their friend Clayton. And then the plot twist. Bronte, as it turns out, was a friend of Guinevere Beck before she passed. She was sort of a student that was being mentored by Beck, so they had a lot of conversations about writing styles and references and stuff that was recognizable to each of their own personal styles of writing. So when Guinevere died, Bronte was taking care of her dying mother in Ohio, and she actually read the book by Beck and realized that some of the references and some of the passages were very uncharacteristic of Beck. She was suspicious. What is this book, and why did she write like this? And then she finds a few people online who are also suspicious and believe that Dr. Quincy Rancy, I'm going to call him Quincy, the guy that he framed for Beck's murder, they believe that he's innocent. And among those people is the doctor's very own son, Clayton. Thus begins a sort of a friendly online book group where they spend their lives tracking Joe's movements until eventually he dies at the end of season 3. But then when he reemerges at the end of season 4, they realize, whoa, Joe is actually alive and he's now married to one of the richest families in the country and he's just gallivanting around town like he's done nothing wrong. So they come up with a plan. They want to nail Joe Goldberg for all of his crimes. But in order to do that, they have to get close to him, and it's going to be really complicated. So eventually, Bronte, real name Louise, breaks into his bookstore several times to gain his trust and realizes that making him fall in love with her is actually a lot easier than she thought. And this is when the starts, because Louise, as determined as she was initially to nail Joe, eventually she ends up falling in love with him. Like, for real. What started off as a ruse, as catfishing, as trying to catch him for all of his crimes, ends up with Louise completely brainwashed, thinking that, no, there's no way that he killed Beck. He only kills bad people because he was sweet to her, and he whispered sweet nothings into her ear, and he never really gave away anything that might connect him with Beck's murder. Louise is so stupid that she actually tells the police, hey, he didn't kill Clayton. That was simply self-defense. Clayton was attacking me. You should let him go. So Joe gets out on bail. And at this point, Kate is really pissed off at him because he's just killed someone. There's a scandal online. Everyone is talking about Joe. Is he a serial killer? Is he a philanthropist billionaire? The public outrage is so bad that we start seeing characters from his past all share their stories on TikTok, prompted by Bronte's friends who are still hell-bent on taking him down and are now more pissed off than ever that Clayton's murder has just gone unaddressed. The saddest thing about this part was that we never saw Jenna Ortega. For anyone who was hoping that she would come back in this season, I was. I guess she was just too busy filming Wednesday season 2 over the span of 3 years. I mean, they could have gotten her for a simple 30-second cameo. I'm sure they had the money to pay her, but I don't know, maybe I respect Jenna's decision to just step away from the series because she's moved on to bigger and better things. I really hope that she was going to be a part of taking him down. but she wasn't. Kate takes away Joe's son Henry and puts him in a safe house with her other half-brother, Teddy. And Joe is super angry, but he's also really hated on social media. And it's quite ironic that he's used social media all these years to stalk the women he becomes obsessed with. And now it's social media that is exposing him for all of his crimes, which again is quite wild when you think about the amount of shit that he's done, the amount of really bad stories that he's gotten involved with, and not a single person has connected the dots, or not a single cop has bothered to investigate this fully and realize that, whoa, Joe is the one we should be arresting. At this point, Joe has no choice but to blackmail Maddie into helping him do a PR makeover to his public image because he has a video of her killing her twin sister in that glass cage. So Maddie arranges for a TikTok interview with a really popular journo influencer that the Lockwood family owns. And if at first the interview was going really, really terribly, he starts crying about his trauma, which just makes him even less likable to the public eye. Then he receives a text from Bronte. Bronte, the dumbass, is so remorseful that she texts Joe, "I told the police you didn't kill him, by the way," almost as if offering an olive branch of like, hey, I still love you. And Joe, who at this point was ready to track down Bronte and kill her for exposing his ugly side to the world, is now all of a sudden, within seconds, does a 180 and is suddenly Team Bronte yet again. He's like, whoa, you really like me. I'm gonna get you back, but not before I turn this public image thing around and make everybody fall in love with me. And somehow he pulls it off. He looks at the fucking camera and he talks about his love for Bronte, or the love that he thought they had, and that it's not her fault. It's his complete responsibility. He's not here to blame anyone. He's here to simply address his behavior and take accountability. And you can see the comments on the live starting to turn around from calling him a psychopathic murderer to actually he's kind of goals. And now all of a sudden I like books. And you just got to give it to them, because this is exactly what happened in season 1. You know, he kills a bunch of people. He's awful. And fans are still going to go online and say he's a misunderstood guy. He deserves some leniency, some grace. Fucking dumbasses. And as art imitates life, or life imitates art, they both imitate each other. Joe intercepts a guy from the Manosphere who's about to kidnap Bronte and probably torture her to death because he thinks that women should say less, and then gives her the option to either kill him or let him go. He basically leaves her with the guy trapped in the glass cage and says, hey, I'll be right back. Do whatever you want. And Bronte ends up letting him go, despite knowing that he is a misogynistic asshole who has promised not to change his ways. He's still going to go after women. He's just going to make sure that they're actually bad when he tries to shove them in the back of his van and kill them someplace else. She then has another one of those life-changing conversations with Joe where they discuss his dark side and the fact that he enjoys killing, and she somehow convinces herself and then tries to convince him that you don't like killing. You just feel like you had to kill to prove your love to others, but you don't have to do that with me. And I guess that's good enough for Joe. He's like, oh wow, you really see me. I think that we can really do this. So they get back together. He fully admits that he likes killing. He admits that he has killed people. But there's this really weird moral conundrum that they kind of volley with throughout the season. Are you allowed to punish bad people if they are truly bad? Is killing justifiable if the person is bad? In Bronte's mind, Joe is chaotic good, or some stupid shit like that. But the fact that she moved to New York because she thought that he killed her friend and all of those other people, all of those stories that came out about him, but then he convinces her that no, I didn't kill these good people. I just killed all the other bad people. So everything is right except for the fact that I killed your friend. I gotta give it to him. He is the king of gaslighting. And you'd think that in real life this wouldn't work, but Bronte is so enamored by this man that is capable of loving her fully and entirely that she just turns a blind eye completely. She's like, I am not dumb like all the other girls. I know better. Meanwhile, Kate goes to London to free Nadia from prison. Remember Nadia, the college student that she helped put in jail for her boyfriend's murder, the murder that Joe committed, thinking that she was saving Joe from his past sins, that he was a changed human being, when actually she just helped put a 19 or 20-year-old in prison for 3 years. Well, she gets her out, and their plan is for Nadia to testify against Joe. But when they realize that might take literal years, because the justice system is designed to protect rich people, not actually punish people that deserve to be punished, they decide finally that the only course of action they can take is to kill Joe. But the fact that Kate took Henry to London infuriates Joe to the point where he frames Harrison for Reagan's murder, and Harrison and Maddie go to jail for conspiring to kill Reagan because they were having an affair. You know, it's a very easy case for the police to close. So Reagan and Nadia come up with a plan. They are going to imprison Joe in the glass box and force a confession out of him that he's the one who framed Harrison. And in return, they're going to allow him to go to a country with no extradition agreements with the United States and allow him to live a long, happy life away from everyone that he knows and loves. So they imprison Joe in the glass box, just as he was making plans with Bronte to move to Ireland, buy a castle, and live their happy days writing fan fiction about vampires. Ugh. It's nauseating. It's almost as bad as Joe and Love Quinn. That was like peak cringe.
I wolf you.
What a great performance, but damn, what a shoddy, uncomfortable script to sit through. They then bring out Marianne. Remember Marianne, the woman he falls in love with in season 3, then imprisons in season 4, who has to fake her own death to get away from him, and he thought she was dead, so he abandons her in a park in the middle of the night, only for her to wake up and leave the country and go live with her daughter somewhere far away from him. Well, she's back, and Joe is kind of shocked that she's still alive, but he's also sort of relieved, but also unable to accept that he is the villain. He is the toxic one that deserves the punishment. He still maintains that was a different person. Now that I have finally accepted my dark side, I only kill bad people. Back then, I was confused. I was a bad person. But I saved you. Has the nerve to look Marianne in the eye and say, I saved you. Right before he kidnapped her and starved her for weeks and forced her to fake her own death. One good thing that happens out of all this is that Marianne has a bump in with Bronte, and she really lets her have it in a very calm, soft way. She's like, you think you're smarter than all the other women, but you have that little voice in the back of your mind telling you that something is wrong, and you keep ignoring it because of the way he loves you, because of the way he cherishes you, because of how he makes you feel when he's with you, and you think, I'm not like the other girls, I would never fall for this. All whilst falling for it. Listen to what people are telling you. And that's enough to shake Bronte to her core. So she leaves and seemingly realizes that Joe is in fact a killer, and she's just been lying to herself because she's been so obsessed with this fantasy of him that she can't bring herself to see the real him. And that's like the core issue of the series, is that there's the real Joe and there's the fantasy of Joe. Yet somehow none of these women are able to see the real him because the fantasy of him is so much nicer and endearing and loving and comfortable. Annoyingly, this whole season, Joe keeps banging on about how he wants someone to love him for him, to embrace his dark side. He thought he had that with Kate when she decided never to look into his past and just accept him for who he is, and then even signed off on Uncle Bob's murder, making him feel valid and needed, useful, like a knight in shining armor there to protect the woman of his dreams. But when she rejects that part of him after he offers to kill her sister, he's like, I want to kill your whole family and I want you to cheer me from the sidelines. When she says no, he feels rejected, and he feels like no one is able to embrace the dark side of him. No one is able to understand his need of killing, but Bronte somehow is the chosen one because she's fine with him having killed bad people in the past, though not necessarily signing off on him continuing to be a serial killer, but that's enough for him. And the most frustrating thing is that he did have someone who loved him entirely for who he is. In fact, he could have had a long, happy life of killing people and having a wife and a son with Love Quinn. Love Quinn was him as a woman. But interestingly, as soon as he gets confronted with her true nature, her true intentions, how much she is like him, he was like, F that, you are crazy and I need to get away from you. It's the lack of self-awareness that he doesn't realize that he's exactly like Love Quinn, but if even for him, her way of being was too much. Imagine how all the women in your life feel, Joe. The call is coming from inside the house. And I don't think I'll ever forgive the series for genuinely going ahead and killing Love. I think that it would have made a great plot point if he thought she was dead. She also faked her own death and then somehow came back in season 5 just to punish him further. That would have been great. That would have been great, because then it would have been like evil versus evil. But no, it's Bronte. Somehow, in the middle of the buffoonery, they decide, okay, we're just gonna kill Joe. But Joe somehow preempts an attack on him and shoves a key inside of his arm just in case. So he escapes the glass box and he shoots Kate and he tries to escape. But then there's Maddie up there and she's like, no, I'm gonna burn this whole place to the ground. And she does. Despite Joe screaming that her sister is there, she doesn't believe him. She just wants him dead. And so Joe goes back downstairs and Kate also hits him and hurts him. And now they're both bleeding out in a burning building. And Kate even gets him to confess killing Love, a recording that she sends to Nadia so she can show the police. But here comes Bronte. Bronte just couldn't stay away. Bronte couldn't go back to Ohio. Enters a burning building, sees Kate and Joe there. And after finally accepting that Joe is the bad guy, she saves Joe. But don't worry, it's not because she truly loves him. She now wants to get justice for Beck. She now realizes that the only way that he'll actually face justice and not just die in a burning building is for her to find out the full truth and somehow get him to go to prison. I don't know. It ends with Joe proposing to Bronte in front of a burning building, and she's like, yes. And then we have two inner monologues. We have Joe's inner monologue, I finally found love, you came back for me, you accept me, the same spiel, the same bullshit. And we have Bronte's inner monologue, I now know it's up to me, I need to find out what happened to Beck, I'm gonna get justice for her, I'm the only person that can do it. And so we enter the finale of season 5. Joe and Bronte are on the run. Bronte's uncomfortable because she is scared. Now she realizes that Joe isn't who he said he was. And Joe is too busy worrying about the police to even realize that Louise is not on his side. So they break into this house that's going to be empty for a few days. And Louise is on the verge of dropping her cover. He's getting more suspicious. The fact that she kisses him and she's not able to make it convincing enough, she knows that it all has to end that night. So as he's about to go down on her, she pulls a gun on him and drops the facade and forces him to redact every single thing he added or changed to Beck's book. At the same time, Joe is trying to speak to his son through a video game, and when he does, his son tells him that he is a monster. It's so funny. He's like, remember when you told me that there were no monsters in my bedroom? You lied. You're the monster. And that was just chef's kiss. Joe realizing that through all of his actions of trying to protect his son, he ultimately became the monster that he feared his own stepfather was. Remember his origin story, that he protected his mom by killing his stepdad or something, and that type of violence really changed him. He's been trying to shelter Henry from that kind of shit because he's scared that Henry will turn out like him. And now Henry knows. Joe sucks. Hole. And after he redacts everything from Beck's book, there is a fight, and we go back to a popcorn thriller. There's shootings, and people bleed, and eventually Joe seemingly drowns her in a lake. Then he kills a police officer who's there looking for them, but then a bunch of police arrive, and suddenly Bronte's not dead, actually. She got a gun, and she points it at Joe, and she's like, this is over. Joe is desperate for her to kill him. He's realized there's no way out of this. He wants to die because spending his life in prison is kind of worse, but she doesn't want to kill him. She wants him to face justice. And I guess that's one good thing they did with this series, is that if he had died in the burning building, he would have just died. It wouldn't have been a satisfying ending. But somehow I wanted his demise to be at the hands of all the women he wronged. I wanted Marianne, Kate, Nadia, Louise, Jenna Ortega's character, Ellie. I wanted all of them to just face him and, I don't know, watch him starve to death in that glass box, or be kept in that glass box forever by himself, just on tiny, tiny rations of food and water, just taken to the brink of death, but never allowed to truly die, so he could actually really suffer. Instead, he gets life in prison on your tax dollars. Too lenient. But there is a really good line that Louise throws at him that I think summarizes this series quite well. She says, the fantasy of a man like you is how we cope with the reality of a man like you. Bullseye. That is That is it, though, isn't it? That is what all of this is about. It's that Joe, in reality, is a really toxic, dangerous, abusive serial killer guy who puts up this fantasy that is so easily believable, because in a world where so many men are just bad, and there's a growing trend of younger men leaning right and thinking that women shouldn't have any rights and their places in the kitchen making sandwiches and taking care of the kids, there's something quite soothing about a guy who is romantic and who reads books and understands references and gives you agency and believes in you and your potential and elevates you, supports your dreams, goes to battle for you. That's the fantasy that's easy to buy, because the reality is so much grimmer and scary. And I'm not saying there aren't good men out there. I'm just saying that it's hard to know when they are good or not good, because even when they are good, this fantasy, sometimes they turn out to be evil. I think the leading cause of femicide is at the hands of their husbands or loved ones. Women spending 10, 20, 30 years married to someone only to realize that that man will kill them without hesitation. These cases happen. These cases are scary. They're f***ed up. So in a way, I don't blame these women for believing the fantasy of Joe, because if you don't, what are you going to do? Either be celibate or try lesbianism, which isn't really a choice? Kind of difficult. Ultimately, though, Bronte shoots him in the dick and films him getting taken away by the police. And I think that sways public opinion. Finally, they're seeing Joe for the little dickless weasel that he is. Dickless, a keyword, literally. But it's also not concerning, but revealing that it takes him getting his dick shot off for people to finally turn on him. Like, before that happened, he had a penis, therefore he was still worthy of being romanticized and glamorized. But now that he can't even f you good, what is the point of defending him? It's kind of funny. He is arrested and ends up going to prison for a very, very long time. A lot of consecutive life sentences with no possibility of parole. His list of crimes was so extensive. And everyone gets their happy ending. Bronte is finally at peace, and she republishes Guinevere Beck's book, now without all of Joe's add-ons, and the book becomes an even bigger success. I think that was something really interesting they did. They went back to the origins of his story, season 1, and they finally gave Beck a worthy ending. They gave her voice back, because that was one of the main points of contention of the story, is that Joe has a tendency to lure women in, obsess over them, stalk them, kill all their friends, and then steal their voices. So at least Louise was able to give Beck some sort of justice in her legacy. It's better than anyone was able to do so far. Marianne is now a free artist. She doesn't have to worry about Joe one day finding her, tracking her down, and killing her. Maddie avoids prison time for killing her sister Reagan because of the circumstances, how everything happened, and she is now pregnant with twins and happily living with Harrison and their daughter. Kate had previously nominated her brother Teddy for CEO of Lockwood Corporations, and he has now turned the entire company into a 100% nonprofit organization, which is great. It's the best type of punishment for whatever billionaire made the company. Kate's dad was an awful man who routinely killed people and took his enemies out of his way just to stay in power. So it was quite nice and fitting to see that this man's legacy was now being turned into something charitable, something for good. And as it turns out, Kate did not die in that fire. She does have some extensive scars in her arm, but she wears them proudly. Not proudly, but like she embraces them. And Joe rots in prison. And as he's rotting in said prison, he still receives fan mail from women who want him to track them down and protect them and take them and do naughty, bad things to them because they've been such bad girls. And that's when Joe, in his inner monologue, tells us that maybe he's not the problem. Maybe the problem is you. And I think he's absolutely right. I think the problem is us. I think it's a nice way of really summarizing the success of this series, because as frustrated as we are with the story and how much he got away with for so long, we also can't really take ourselves out of the equation, because we were actually glamorizing him in real life. We were looking at this character with rose-colored glasses thinking he may kill people, but it's mainly bad guys, right? He has a moral compass until all of his plans go to shit and the women he loves reject him, and then they gotta go too, because if I can't have you, no one will. And that was You, one of my guilty pleasures. As many plot holes and inconsistencies as there were throughout the 5 seasons, I'm glad that Netflix gave it a fitting ending. one that shows that, men can get away with a lot, but not everything. And sometimes women do win. Sometimes. That's the scary part, is that it doesn't matter what we think of this story. The reality is that there's a lot of women out there going through probably the same or even worse who will never get justice for the crimes committed against them. And that's something that we should all ruminate as a society. Yeah. And that's it for today, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure to like, subscribe, comment down below your favorite parts of this season, if you've watched it. Also, a little small hint for my next video. Maybe it's time for me to ask you guys another simple favor. And with all that said, thank you so much for being on that side. And until next time, stay safe, stay sane, stay stupid, stay stuttering. Bye, guys.